Happy New Year to all my friends and listeners out there. Some of you have made the 10-minute teacher part of your habit and you're driving to school on Monday morning, January 7th, heading back to school. Or some of you may have gone back last week like I did. But either way, I just hope that this new year is an incredible year. It's a remarkable year where you really connect with your students. As I was looking over all the episodes that I've been recording over Christmas break, I really thought that this heartwarming episode with Stacey Corrigan would be the right way to start the year. She has a really honest conversation about her classroom management secrets and how she handles things, and I just really like her style. I thought it would be encouraging and you would not feel alone. Remember that the beginning of the school year is a perfect time to kind of restart. As well as in January, you can reboot. You can be that teacher that you want to be. And remember, you can always change your habits like I have and Stacey has. So this is episode 411, Never Yell and Other Secrets of a Classroom Management Pro.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
Today, we're talking with Stacey Corrigan, 20-plus year elementary teacher. Stacey, we are going to talk about a topic that's always on a teacher's mind, classroom management. What are your biggest struggles that you struggle with when you're trying to help kids and manage your classroom?
A lot of times I struggle with focusing. It's second graders, and a lot of times when it's time to get started, they want to talk about something else. Just focusing in and listening and being ready to learn.
So how do you help kids focus, and how do you help them transition from one activity to the next?
One of the things I started doing, actually, even when I was student teaching, is I use a lot of music and movement. For example, if I have my students going to the carpet from their desks, we do a little, we'll walk in, we stop, and then they freeze and nobody moves. And then we'll start doing that. And then we'll walk in, we'll stop. And then we keep going until we get over to the carpet. And it becomes a game, and the kids really like it. The nice thing about that is that they all know, because I've talked and told them that when we finally get to the carpet, then we're ready to get started. And they've gotten their wiggles out, they've gotten their giggles out. And so then they're ready to go when it's time.
I love that. So you have music for moving to the carpet. What else? Do you have any other little transition things that kids sing or do?
I do a lot of call and response. My students particularly love that. I do a lot of 1, 2, 3, eyes on me, 4, 5, 6, zip your lips. They love that. If you hear my voice, clap one time, we clap it. And then I challenge them. Another thing that they love, and I start this at the beginning of the year, is I tell them that they get 3 chances to quiet themselves. So if you hear my voice, clap one time. Then if you hear my voice, clap 2 times. Then I tell them by the 3rd time, my expectation is that everybody's listening. But if they can beat that and they only get 1 or 2 claps, then they get extra recess time. They love that. And
yeah, because you're giving them extra, you're giving a reward.
Exactly. And I've never had to go beyond 3 ever because, they want that recess time. So, I try to do 5 minutes extra. Basically, if it's 2, and I do, if it's just 1 clap, a lot of times it'll just be, I'll give them 8 minutes extra or something like that, because it's a big deal.
Wow. But how often are you having to do the clap once and clap twice? It's not like you're having to do that all day, though, is it?
Oh, no. At the beginning of the year, I do it a lot, but towards the end, as time progresses, they get really good at it and stuff.
Part of classroom management is having a schedule and a flow and a routine. What is kind of your system for organizing your classroom so that classroom management is easier?
That's something that I really struggled with at the beginning of the year, or at the beginning of my career. But what I found is that I set up I pretty much, because our district just did this where we have all of our specials at the same time every single day. So my special time's from 1:10 to 1:50 every day. So I pretty much just set my schedule. It's the same every single day. So they know what's coming all of the time. That's really helpful for my special education students. I have a couple of students that are on the spectrum, the autism spectrum, and it really helps them function. But it's also really helpful for everybody that they know, okay, math is first, then comes reading, then comes writing, then comes science, then comes specials, then comes social studies. So every once in a while I've had to switch it around. And when I do that switch, we talk about how it's like Wacky Wednesday. Today we have a, assembly right in the middle of the morning. So we have to change things up. And I've even had them volunteer suggestions about how we're going to cover everything for the day. And I'll say, oh gosh, our time's really limited here. So what are we going to do? So that they're kind of responsible for budgeting that time too.
If we get behind and say I lose a class period, I'll consult with my students and say, okay, this is how much we need to cover. Here's how much time. How do we want to cover it? And so many times their suggestions are just absolutely fantastic. Stacey, let's talk about when a student does misbehave or they're talking or whatever. How do you communicate to the student? Because we know that it's a mistake, arguing with a student in front of the class. One of the easiest ways to have problems with your whole class is to lose their respect in front of, by how you handle things. So what are your secrets?
Okay, well, one of the things that I do, I give my students the benefit of the doubt whenever I'm, approaching a situation where they're misbehaving. I say a student is talking while I'm teaching. One thing I do is I just look over at that student and I smile at the student. And there's days I don't want to smile. There's days I'm frustrated or, upset that the student is doing that. But I try really hard to remember not to take this personally, that the kid's just being a kid. And so I'll smile at the child and I'll kind of just stare at the child for a second. And usually they stop. If they keep going, then I might not smile and then just kind of I stop class and I just look and I wait for the person. Sometimes I say, I'll wait for you. Sometimes I don't have to because they know. If it continues to be an issue, I privately speak with the student out in the hallway. Most of my students don't really go beyond that. Probably my next step would be talking to a parent. When I do talk to a parent, I'll say, Mr. or Mrs. Smith, your child's talking while I'm teaching social studies. It's disrupting the class. I've talked to him 3 or 4 times. Do you have anything to say to him or her? And the parent always has something to say to the kids. And I tell my students that that's what the conversation will be, that I will actually say that with the child standing right next to me. And then I hand the phone over to the child and I don't have any more conversation with the parent, but the parent then takes over. And I tell my students, you don't want that conversation. I said, they know that I'm the kind of teacher that I don't pick with my students. I don't pick with small things. But if you get a phone call from me, it's something that needs to be addressed.
And what a powerful way to handle things, because then there's he said, she said, you're just right there having that conversation. But you probably don't have to do a lot of parent phone calls, do you?
No, I don't. I don't at all.
How many in a year would you think?
Let's see. Well, it's half a year right now, I think. I've called twice.
I love that. I find it interesting because as you were talking about your lower level things, first I smile, then I look at them and I don't smile, and then I approach, and then we privately speak in the hallway, which I cannot stress enough how important it is to have those private conversations in the hallway, because kids, especially I deal with high school and middle school. And there are some kids who want an audience. And if they know that they're not going to have an audience, then you don't have to worry about that. And you can have those private conversations. You don't want to become, a spectacle or that sort of thing. I've seen that happen, and it's just not a good thing. And then you talked about, talking to a parent, and I could tell that you had not had that conversation as much because you don't have to get there.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And the kids even say at the beginning of the school year, when I tell them this is what happens, because I do take them through the steps. I say, okay, if I'm getting to a point where I'm talking to somebody, 3 or 4 times and their behavior hasn't changed, then I will call the parent and I tell the kids that that's what I'll do. And they all say, oh, we don't ever want that to happen. So they know that that's where we're going. They know that I know that they can have a bad day here and there. They can make mistakes. We talk about all those things, and I also tell them, hey, if you're having a bad day, let's say, you have a baby sister and they were up all night crying, so you didn't get a lot of sleep, or you got in trouble before you came to school, then I need you to come up to me and I need you to say, hey, Mrs. Corrigan, today's a really bad day. And I'll give you a break. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, but it can't be every day. And and if it is, then we're going to have a conversation with your parent about why that's happening. So they know that too. They know that they can't take advantage of that too much either.
Your students ever end up having to go to administration or principal's office?
I have had to. I have had the student that has severe behavior issues. So we have sent the student to the office a couple of times. But how we've set it up is that it's more like the principal is a cool down person. Yeah. And it's actually a really positive experience for him. He can be violent, and he's definitely one of my more challenging students that I've ever had. But I made a decision early on in the school year that I wasn't suspending him. I wasn't sending him home. So when he does go to the office, it's more like, okay, what just happened? What can we do to fix it? How can we work on this next time?
One of my favorite mentors, Betty Shaver, used to always say, at the beginning of the year, I want you to write down 3 kids' names of 3 kids who really, really struggle and need that extra. And I want you to look at that index card several times a week, and I want you to really do what it takes. And it sounds like you're doing what it takes to reach every child.
Yeah, I try. And there's times where it is, frustrating, but you really got to remember, like what you were saying, what doing right for the children is really what it's all about. And the ones that give you more challenges, those are the ones that really require you to dig deep and to do what's right. And those are the ones that you make the difference for.
So as we finish up, Stacey, what's the worst classroom management mistake that you used to make and don't anymore?
I yelled.
Really?
Early on in my career, I yelled. Yeah, I totally did. I yelled. And it never worked, ever. And all it ever did was get me more upset. And it's funny now because I work with other teachers, newer teachers, and I've heard a couple of them yell. And I have a pretty good relationship with them. And the one day I said to him, I said, did it help? And she said, no. And I said, okay, so what are we going to do? Because when you're yelling and you're losing this is hurting you. It's not doing anything at all to the kid. It's not helping the kids. It's not stopping the situation. It's doing nothing. So that was the worst thing I think that I ever did. And I did it. I remember I taught kindergarten. I was in an inner city school, and I had a parent come up to me and she said, you got to get tougher with these kids. And I think about it sometimes, and I did. And the way that I was going to be tough was that I was going to yell, but it didn't work. What those kids needed more than anything was somebody that they got structure and stability from. And so once I got past the yelling, I learned a lot that year because I remember one of my students said, and this is a little kindergartner, I yelled, and my little student goes, my mom yells louder than that all the time. And I realized that I couldn't, it just didn't do anything. It didn't impress them. It didn't do anything.
I would agree that yelling for me did nothing. And I did it, I would say I did it a decent amount early on. It's not really something that happens. The joke is I lose my temper once a year, and I already had my one time in early December. But I did have an excuse because I was a little stressed because of all the damage to my house. But still, it always hurts the relationship. And when you yell, particularly if you do it in front of others, the other kids, you really can lose their respect. And, there's just better ways to handle things. Thank you, Stacey, for sharing all of these ideas. There's really some fantastic ideas. I know that there's more than one way to manage a classroom. We all have different ways, but talking about the realities of teaching helps us realize we're not alone. There are ways to do this, and there are ways to have a peaceful, happy, awesome day. And kids tend to feed off of our emotions, so we need to guard those emotions and make sure that we bring the right emotions into the classroom. You know, as you're trying to start this new year and you don't want to burn out and you don't want to stress out and you just want to do things right, I would encourage you to take the free 5-day challenge of 5 ways to doing fewer things better from Angela Watson. So to get there, just go to coolcatteacher.com/trim, because this webinar or this session of a 5-day challenge is supposed to help you trim at least 3 hours off your work week. Now, Angela Watson's 40-hour work week cohort is forming, and it closes this January 10th, 2019. I have participated in this cohort for the last several years and learned so much. So if you want to check that out, go to coolcatteacher.com/40, and it'll take you to her site, and you can learn all about the 40-hour work week. It really has made a difference in my own productivity in the classroom and how much more time I could spend at home. In fact, I think that I could probably say, I don't know if I could do the 10-minute teacher if I hadn't gone through the 40-hour work week, just because it did save me a good 4 or 5 hours of time a week, just helping me be more productive. So good luck, and I hope you check it out at coolcatteacher.com/40.
Thank you for listening to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. You can download the show notes and see the archive at coolcatteacher.com/podcast. Never stop learning.